Welcome, everybody, to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary. I have this handsome man with the most beautiful head shape ever, Mr. Thom Campbell. Thank you for being on my
Thank
show.
you. That's an unexpected compliment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hi, how are you today, Ree?
I am doing fantastic. It's always fun to connect with lighthearted, laughing, and just simple, and a fucking genius soon to be
Fucking
discovered.
genius.
So I can't
Absolutely.
I can't wait for us to dive in. You know what, Thom? This is his very first time doing a podcast, and I'm super excited that he gets to be on my show because once he gets really popular and famous, then I won't be able to book anything with him.
It,
So might
it'll
as well
it'll
catch him early.
you'll have to talk to my people after that.
To your assistant.
my, my people will call your people or something.
That's it. And you know what? We're gonna have an amazing time. It's really about two friends just talking and collaborating and helping one another and supporting in this beautiful cause of making humanity a much better place to live in.
Absolutely.
So yes. So today's topic, we're gonna be looking at being happy at work, how to find satisfaction and even joy in what you do in everyday life. So before I do that, I want to be able to do just a little bio of Thom. So Thom is actually an executive and career coach who has coached both within the government and in the private sector. And he has helped many, many people of all kinds of challenges, from micromanaging boss to judgmental family member to deciding to go back to school and pursuing a degree. Thom is a father of three, living in Northern Virginia, close to Washington, D.C., and he spent his career in the federal government and national nonprofit. He believes in the potential of every human being. That is why we connected. The potential to be happy and be successful, the potential to be amazing in a job that feeds the spirit, and the potential to become the best version of their authentic self. Thank you so much. That summarized it so well.
Well, thanks, Ree. I one of the things that resonated in our earlier conversation, I think,
Yes.
was that what you do in your coaching with people and their relationships is not dissimilar from what I do with people and their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to live your authentic life. You want to live your you want to be your best self.
Yes.
Not a better version of somebody else, but you want to be your best self.
Yeah.
And to do that and to do that well and to be able to thrive while doing that.
Yeah.
That requires you to be in a particular place and to have a particular mental framework approaching that. So that and it's the same with what you do. And I think coaching is a wonderful thing. I've been a coach for about 6 years. It's an amazing tool to use, and it can be used in so many different ways. And so I was really glad to hear a little bit more about what you did last time we talked.
So Thom is actually in helping people find career path in ways that really ignites them, give them a sense of purpose, where they're actually showing up in the place of their work, where they're not feeling like a slave and feeling like they have to sell their soul to just earn an income every single day. And that is so crucial, because what Thom and I was talking about is, where do you spend the most time is at work, and then where is the area that you feel like fulfilled and all of that. For different people, is everybody, humanity needs to be in relationship. We're social being. So having this connection with Thom is great, because they're both kind of in parallel and they work well together. So that's why I'm so excited to have him here. And Thom has gone through so many challenges and different struggles, so he knows what he's talking about. He's been in the federal government before, and he has journey on that to shifting into the career path that he is doing right now to help others to find their way. But one other thing that I really like about Thom is some of the different things that we spoke about on your journey from suffering as being a people pleaser to finally finding your path now. So talk to us about that.
Well, I think, for a long time, I've known that I used to say I can get along with anybody. I used to say that I'm a likable guy that everybody likes. And I'm good at, thankfully, I was good at making people like me.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize was how much that that behavior on my part was really toxic, was really hurting me.
Yeah.
It was helping a lot of people around me, but it was hurting me because an a it was like I was not being my authentic self, which is okay. You can do that for a short time. Well, actually, sometimes you can do that for a long period of time, but eventually it starts to eat away at your foundation.
Yeah.
And you find yourself, you know, it's like a house. It's like the foundation of the house starts crumbling. There's no fixing it.
Yeah.
There's no fixing that foundation without sort of tearing down the house and starting again. And it's this issue of authenticity, which we've talked about. This issue of authenticity is key to happiness. It's key to happiness, and no matter where you are, if your job, if you are being somebody different at work because you feel like you have to be, that is exhausting. That is going to wear you out. It's going to eventually depress you, if it doesn't yet. And so it's, you know, you need to find a place, and everybody, and I say you, but everybody needs to find a place where you can thrive at work while being yourself. Not in spite of being yourself, but because you're being yourself.
Yeah.
You know, that's the key.
It's a hard balance to find. Like,
it is hard.
It really is.
It is hard.
And maybe you can speak with regards to that. Like, I know for myself as a young kid, you know, there were, luckily for me, like I understood that concept from very young, aside from wanting to please other people, but I always know never to please other people to sell your soul. So
your soul is worth way more than that.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I understood that I got to find a balance between being my true me and yet still being able to fit in different contexts and different location without really compromising the integrity of who I am. And I like to show up the same way as I'm showing up with you all across the board. I'm exactly identical wherever I go. I mean, there are certain places where you can be more open, outspoken with close friends and stuff. But I'm always, yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I think there's an issue with being authentic doesn't mean being honest all the time necessarily. Exactly. Authentic and honesty are two different things. They're both valuable, but being authentic means you're living your life based on your values, based on your sense of self, based on what centers you around where you are. And if you're living life that way, you're not going to fit in everywhere. And you're not supposed to fit in everywhere. You know, I am a coach in a particular manner. In the way I coach is because of who I am. It's because of my personality. It's because of my authenticity. Somebody else will coach similar, but they'll be different because they're a different person. They're a different entity. Yeah. And so I'm not going to be the best coach for everybody, but the people for whom I am a good coach, I'm going to be a great coach because that's the power of authenticity.
Absolutely. Because you don't need to be the best coach for every single person. It doesn't work out that way anyways.
No.
And you attract the right kind of people. And that's what I always say with regards to my business is attracting the right kind of business women who are looking for unconditional self-love for themselves and in their relationship. So they motivate me when they are motivated, when they're the right kind of clients, it is so much more fun. And the growth is exponential because they are invested and they feel and understand the language that you're speaking and they stand by your mission and they believe in what you're teaching. So it is so much more easier when you're able to really be on the same page, because as coach, we always want the best, if not more for our clients. Sometimes we have to, but if you're having to constantly like bang your head against the wall, then there's something off with that client, right? So we don't want to be there either. But I think you are definitely right when you mentioned there is a difference between authenticity and honesty. In the past, I confused the two where I just share honestly all of the time. And I
Yeah.
realized it got me into a lot of trouble.
That'll happen. That'll happen. Yeah. But I'm not anti-honesty. You
No, no,
understand? I mean,
no.
that's not what that's certainly not what I'm advocating, but authenticity is somehow a deeper, more fundamental quality than
Absolutely. Because you
honesty.
can still be honest. You don't have to
Yeah,
share everything
right. And
to
it's not appropriate to share everything.
exactly. And I realized there is a time and a right moment to share truth and while still being authentically you. So there is, don't confuse the two because I confused the two for a very long time. Like even in my relationship, even if I say all of the honest thing to my boyfriend and is being truthful, if he doesn't understand those information, I'm actually doing him more harm. So it's better off to just
True.
leave it. It doesn't bother him. Like for example, I'll give you an example. I went to what is it called? CrossFit. So me, I'm the type of person
Good for
who
you.
says everything. Thank you. And I tell everything. I'm like, oh, so there's so many buff guy in these CrossFit thing, and I'm not one who are extremely impressed by physical appearance. I I don't. Um, so, and the thing that I tell my boyfriend is, you're super lucky because the fact that I'm with you, all I see is you. I don't see anything else. I see physical. I can appreciate it's an art for me, but aside from that, like going to CrossFit with all of these buff men, great for them. Very happy for them.
So
But
let me understand. So you said to your boyfriend, "You are so lucky I don't judge you on your looks."
I didn't say that to him.
So,
I said, honey, there's a
okay.
lot of buff men over there. Everybody that are there are super fit. And so I said, you don't have nothing to worry. He's like, so he interprets, if you're telling me this info, should I be worried? I'm like, no, I was
Right.
telling you this
Right.
so that you wouldn't be worried. I mean, now he's worried. So I was like, see, sometimes
Yeah.
telling the truth doesn't always work out. So you need to know when and how the person is able to take the
Mhm.
information. So I've learned that for a long time. But what I really want to highlight as well with regards to you, Thom, is that, for me, I lost my sister, then there was the divorce, but you gone through quite a bit of loss to realize there is a reason. Like, tell me a little bit about Thom, who he was as a child, to what he's gone to in terms of loss, to being the best coach. Like, honestly, for me, I know when somebody is actually good and their shit, and you are one good coach.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and I can like I can tell people in terms of their potential right away. It doesn't take me long to detect these things. So, but I love having the conversation that we have together. They're real, they're straight to the point, and you really know what you're talking about. So that's why I invited
Well,
you.
I appreciate that. I thank you for saying that. It's a little bit about me. I grew up in Tennessee, a small town. My father was a minister. My mother was the organist at
Mhm.
church. In fact, for a long time, I thought that had to happen normally. I thought that they came as a pair, a matching set. Like every time you went, the minister was always married to the organist. Was my thought. Um, but it was a fairly normal upbringing, except for, and I'm only discovering this now, I never got any background in business.
Mm,
My parents were not business people. My grandparents were not business people. I have worked in government and nonprofit my entire life.
mhm,
So the coaching part is fun, and I
mhm.
am a damn good coach. I agree with
Yeah.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
I am. Um, but I'm learning how to do the business part, which is fun, and we can talk more about that later. But um, I spent some time in college in a group called Up with People, which
Mhm.
was a great experience traveling throughout Europe and through the United States. Met a lot of people, many of whom are my best friends in the world still.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and I came to Washington 1988,
Mhm.
and I've been working since in the city, and I've learned a lot. I've been a lot of different things. I've been program manager for the federal government. I was a nonprofit lobbyist.
Mhm. Mhm.
We use the word advocate. We didn't say
Yeah.
lobbyist, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so policy has been a sort of a foundation of my work for a long time. And I
Mhm.
think that's a good foundation for a lot of things, because
Mhm.
policy can be a, if you think about what policy is, it's a set of habits. It's a
Mhm. Mhm.
set of guidelines
Yeah.
that if everybody follows them, everybody's going to be better off.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so you can translate that to, what do I need to do for myself?
Yeah.
If I do these things, I'm going to be better off.
Mhm.
And it's really, I think we talked about last time, coaching is getting from A to B. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But that's also super complicated.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but you mentioned your sister, and I was sorry to hear about your sister. And my daughter went through something similar when she was in high school. Um, it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to be the parent
Yeah.
of somebody who's hurting that badly.
Yeah.
Um, Harder than I could ever imagined, actually.
Yeah.
And my wife and I separated about a year and a half ago. That's been hard, but also there's growth. There's growth
Yes.
in all of these things. The hard stuff brings growth, and that's important. I was years ago, and probably my if you want to call it an origin story as a coach.
Mhm.
If you're into the Marvel world, my origin story as a coach was it happened about 20 years ago. I had a job that I really liked.
Yeah.
I worked with people that I really liked.
Yeah.
Um, I after a couple years in my head, I love this job. I used to brag to my friends about what a great job I had.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
fun. It was fun.
Mhm.
And but gradually I got bored.
Okay.
I wasn't doing anything new, and I wasn't learning anything new. So I
Yeah.
got a little bored,
Yeah.
and I got a little bit more bored, and then I got a little bit more bored, and then I got unhappy.
Mhm.
But the narrative in my head was still, oh, I love my job.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
was really confused,
Yes.
which made the cognitive disconnect even
Yeah.
worse. And so my boss pulled me aside, and I'd known my boss for years at that point, 5, 6
Mhm.
years. And she pulled me aside and she said, what's going on with you? And I said, what are you talking about? Everything's fine. I love my job.
Mhm.
But I knew there was something,
Mhm.
another part of me knew there was something wrong.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, my boss left. The
Okay.
boss that I had known for a long time, the boss that hired me, the boss that was there when everything was going really, really well.
Yeah.
And a new boss came in, a new
Mhm.
supervisor. And this is what I've learned since then. The biggest upheaval in how someone feels about their job often comes when they get a new supervisor.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's either that they have moved to a new team with a new supervisor, or a new supervisor has come in.
Mhm.
Because I've heard the phrase, people don't leave jobs, they leave supervisors.
Yep.
That's not always true, but that is often true.
Yep.
And so I got a new supervisor. She was fine, nothing wrong with her, but she saw right through me. She
Mhm.
saw right through what I was going through, and she didn't put up with it, and I got fired.
Mm.
And I thought that was the lowest point in
Mhm.
at that point in my life, that was the lowest I'd ever been.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it was awful. It takes away your identity if you're
Yes.
overly identified with your job.
Yeah.
It takes away your not just your practical things. It takes away your salary, it takes away your
Mhm.
security, but it makes you feel like a terrible person, like you've
Yeah.
done something, like you're
Yeah.
not you've done something bad, but you are something bad, and
Mhm. Mhm.
that is crushing.
Yes.
And I can look back on it now and I can say, you know what? It was hard getting fired, but it was the best thing in the world, because I was not in a good place.
Yeah.
At the time, that's almost impossible to say. I
Yeah.
couldn't have said that.
Yeah.
But I think back on that time and I think, anytime you're faced with, the crap that life throws at you,
Mhm.
and it does, it throws it at all of us. And
Yeah.
if you haven't gotten it yet, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
And anytime you're faced with that, you have choices. You might think you don't have choices, but you do have choices.
Mhm.
And I think about how miserable I was back then. And I think about all the people that I could help now get to a better place, maybe avoid that situation at all. The truth was, I stayed in that job 2, 3 years longer than I should have. I
Mm-hmm.
should have left, but there
Mm-hmm.
was nobody around to say, you should go,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was hard. And it was a hard reality. And it was a reality I learned way too late, way too late.
Mm-hmm. And but that really, like, thank you for sharing that, because that's huge, because a lot of people feel this and go through this a lot, but very little will admit it. I actually just have a friend who left the job with a huge
Mhm.
salary to chase after a dream and not knowing if she's going to succeed. But oftentimes we tend to stay too long, we're not challenged enough. Could be like like you said, the dialogue that we have in our head doesn't really match. There's a disconnect in between, and but we're
Right.
not always self-aware of it, or we don't know and we don't see it. And then, like you said, to be able to have being fired hurting your ego so badly, feeling
Oh,
like a bad person, as if
yeah.
you are a bad human being, like almost feeling like a low life here.
Right.
But that in itself, you can either choose to cave or you can choose to rebuild yourself. And you chose slowly to start looking into it and really start tapping into that energy and sitting with all of that emotion, because it is crushing. Because when
Yeah.
your identity is linked to work, which many people do link their identity to work,
Yeah.
it's a huge problematic.
It is a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And environment and circumstances are beyond your control, right? So you have a new supervisor that you had to adapt with, the one
Mhm.
that you really have a good relationship with. They left. And then the circumstances in the workplaces change. People move, priority, policy moves. So a
Yep.
lot of it is beyond your control. So if you stay in that job and you're not motivated over time as you go, human being needs challenges. They need
Yeah.
to grow.
Well, and everybody's different, right?
Yeah.
Everybody needs it in a different way. But I
Yeah.
do think eh, there are fears that come along
Mm,
with our careers,
yeah.
right? And we often fear that loss of identity. We
Yeah.
fear change
Yeah.
because we get comfortable where we are. And I think that was part of my problem. I was comfortable where I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Um, except I wasn't. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was,
Mm-hmm.
but it really, I was miserable. I
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were days I had to pull the car off to the side of the road and just like get
Mm,
my stuff
mm,
together before I was able to make my way to work. But it was um, a real effort to get through that.
yeah.
And I wish I had had, this is going to sound silly, somebody like me. I wish I had had a coach that
Yeah, I
could
agree.
have helped me understand,
Yeah.
because you always have choices.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a woman I worked with last year who was, she was I'm actually still working with her, but she's a mid-level executive at a large organization,
Mhm.
six-figure salary. She's 60 years old. She called me because she had been hired a few months earlier, and I thought she was being hired for one job, but got put into um, a different department.
Mhm.
She got put into a department under a supervisor that did not want her.
Mhm.
She was given to her,
Mhm.
and she made it very clear that she didn't think that my client had the skills that she needed to do the job, and that she didn't expect much from her, and didn't understand why she was there, which
Mhm.
is a terribly defeating
Mm.
thing to hear. And she was upfront about it.
Mhm.
Terribly defeating thing to hear from your supervisor.
Yeah.
Terribly unsettling thing. You feel like you'd have nothing solid to stand on. So she
Mhm.
called me, and she actually called me because she wanted to get she said an exit strategy. She
Mhm.
wanted to figure out how to leave that job
Yeah.
securely and get another one.
Mhm.
And I said, that's fine. We can talk about that, but let's talk about where you are first,
Yeah.
and get you because if you're so stressed at work, if you're so stressed the way she was, you don't have any extra energy to really do the thinking you need to
Yeah.
do, the strategic thinking you need to do to imagine, okay, where do I want to go? And how do I want to get there? Because if you jump, you just jump, you're
Yeah.
likely to jump from one bad situation to another bad
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And you don't, and that's unnecessary and unhelpful and exhausting.
Yeah.
So I worked with her for a little bit. We got her a little bit more comfortable by sort of tapping into some of the things that she had control over. And after 6 months, she had a job that she was able to use her creativity. She was able to use her education background. She was able to use her relationship building skills, which were off the charts. And it was the same job. She never left the job. She had not, because we started working on the things that she could change, and we started sort of exploring her values and what would make her happy and what she could do, regardless of what her supervisor did.
Yeah.
What could she do to create the job to create a job that she liked a little bit better than she liked it yesterday?
Yeah.
After 6 months, she loved this job. She doesn't want to leave now. She's excited about this job. Her supervisor has grudgingly accepted that she's actually good at this job.
Yeah.
But she has made this job through her own efforts, through her own decision making. She has made this job something that she loves. And I didn't anticipate that. I thought we were just going to get her sort of settled and then we'd get her moved. But she managed to do this crazy thing. And I asked her, I said, how much do you think? Because this almost never happens, this kind of clear cut kind of thing. And she said, I said, how much do you think you saved by hiring a coach? And she's 6-figure salary, the contributions to her retirement income, all of that, the fold into that she was 60, she is 60, and she may have had a harder time getting another job comparable for at least for a while. And she said conservatively she saved $125,000 by hiring a coach. And that just blows me away. I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, that's not why I do what I do, but because I really want to make people happy. But it's nice to hear that sort of hard ROI that doesn't come along that often,
It's a really beautiful story, and like honestly, it's maybe even an underestimation. You think like 120K or 125K. It's no 100 is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it is like you think it's a big number, but if you were actually able to tabulate it and count it, the number might be way bigger than that. And honestly,
It might be. It's a little like figuring out an earned run in baseball, but yeah, you could do.
exactly.
Yeah.
And why, like with regards to career, is the actual same thing with relationship. Is like when you actually mentioned that she had to start with herself first, feeling comfortable in that setting, because otherwise she was just going to jump from one bad situation to the next. And it's exactly the same thing for me with clients with regards to relationship. If they don't work on themselves,
exactly. Yes.
If they don't do the internal shift and start feeling more comfortable and at ease, being happy in their own skin and loving themselves and liking who they are, chances are they're just going to reproduce the same pattern with the same type of men or the same type of woman. And then they're just going to find themselves miserable. And years has gone by where they wasted a couple more years into that, only to repeat the same thing. But when you're able to really tap into that power and really gain clarity like she did, it is amazing the shift that you get to see in her client. And I think both you and I agree on that, is to see them.
That's the fun. That's the most fun of being a coach, to see that happen.
Yeah.
I would say something occurred to me while you were talking. So yes, it's true that people need to do that internal work. Absolutely. But when you say to somebody who's hurting, when you say to somebody who's afraid, who's terrified, who's miserable in whatever situation they're in, job, relationship, whatever, if you say to them, you know what, we're gonna have to work on we're gonna have to do some internal work first. They don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. If I'm hurting, if I'm hungry, give me some
Yeah.
food. That's,
Yeah,
I want,
exactly.
I want some relief. And
Yeah.
so what I did with this particular client
Mhm.
was gave her my intent was to
Mhm.
give her some immediate relief.
Yeah.
Like, what can you do tomorrow
Mhm.
to make yourself a little bit less stressed than you are today? What
Absolutely.
can you focus on? What can you change? And it's not about changing anybody else. It's about changing either your actions, your decisions, your perspective, changing something
Mhm. The
that
things
you
you
can
have
change,
control and influence on, yeah.
that you have control over. Right. And you don't have control over much, but the things you do have control over are really powerful if you take
Yes.
control.
Yeah. And when
And
you start with, sorry about that.
no,
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
And when you start with like focusing on those small little area that you do have control over, they over time they magnify and they take more and more space. So all of the
Yes.
things that you no longer have control becomes not so important and so crucial if you just can concentrate. Like we always say, whatever you focus on is what grows, right? So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
focus on the area that you do have control and you expand and you're living in the vibration of joy and content and feeling proud about what you do and serving, well,
Yeah.
chances are this is going to get across. It's going to be felt by other people. You're vibrating at a different frequency, and that is so attractive for most
Right.
people.
Well, and I think you have an in a similar way, and you would
Yeah,
never say this to one of
yeah,
your clients,
yeah,
but if you do the internal work,
yeah.
they may come to you and they say, well, I want a significant other. I want that relationship. I want that bond. I want
Mhm,
that experience. Um, they could work on themselves and come to the realization, oh, maybe they don't need that. Maybe they don't want that.
mhm,
Maybe they're really happy in their single life and they really love so the idea is not to give them a
mhm,
new relationship.
mhm.
My idea is not to give is to get somebody a new job. My
Mhm.
idea is to make them happy. And there's
Yep.
multiple ways that can happen, but it can't happen
Mhm.
until you focus on that authenticity, until you
Yeah.
work on the things that you control.
Mhm.
I just wish this person would just say two nice things to me. If they would just say something nice to me,
Mhm.
or if they would just uh, lay off me for a day or whatever, you
Yeah.
can't control that.
Mhm.
And by then you probably have a pretty good sense of what's coming. You probably
Yeah.
have a pretty good sense of what tomorrow's going to be like. So
Mhm.
how do you go into tomorrow with that knowledge saying, okay, how do I want to be
Mhm.
tomorrow? How
Mhm.
do I want to show up
Mhm.
tomorrow? How do I want to feel at the end of the day?
Yeah.
And that's
Because
a vastly different conversation.
absolutely. Because a lot of people like you, what you said with regards to your story that, you were in a job, you were no longer happy, but you had this dialogue that you're at an amazing job. Like you're actually
Yeah.
there. So a lot of people who tells themselves like, I want a relationship, they're thinking they really need a relationship to feel complete and to feel fulfilled. And as they do the work with me, they realize, holy shit, I can rock on my own and I'm totally okay. Like having that woman or that men with me is just an extra bonus. I can do
Yeah.
with or without, but it's a choice that I get to make. And that is fucking empowering.
And how much more attractive is a person to
Oh my
another
God.
person
Yeah.
once they have done that?
Yeah.
That's the irony. Once
It
you
is.
stop living for somebody else or some other job and you start living for yourself, all that stuff just sort of happens. It gets attracted to you.
It is very, very true. I mean, like, I remember when I was divorced and was just starting to live for myself and doing things to make me feel like a priority, to practice on self-love for myself as I've learned and morph into that. I realized the more that I was loving on myself, the more I didn't need somebody to fill a space,
Yeah.
to fill a void or an emptiness for whatever weird reason, it is super desirable and attractive to the men. They're like, "I want a piece of what she got." I
Right?
and you know what? Men
Yeah.
loves things that are uncomplicated, you're happy, you're vibrant. He's thinking, I don't know what she's on, but I definitely have to have her in my life, right? So it's a weird concept, but that's how it works. So
Well, and you think about it, like,
yeah.
my youngest is 17, and he's talking about his girlfriends and so I tried to explain, not so much anymore, but when he first started dating, don't be anybody but yourself.
Mhm.
You can't really, if you're being somebody else, if you're putting on any kind of filter or any kind of act or mask or anything,
Mhm.
so that the other person likes you more. Okay, they might like you more, except they're not liking you. They're liking this mask that you've put on.
Mhm.
And once, if they don't like the real you, it's not worth being with them anyway.
Yeah.
And so, and the same is true with a job. If you can't be the real you in a job, if you have to be a different person to survive in that job,
Yeah.
that is so much work to do for 2,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
That is so much work that of course you're going to be exhausted and miserable and depressed probably and
Yeah.
burned out and all of those, those, the studies show that 80% of people, and this is remarkable, this is a Gallup study, came out a couple of
Mhm.
months ago, 80% of people said that they were disconnected. They chose the word disconnected
Mhm.
from their job. 80%.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
fully 20%
Mhm.
said miserable.
Yeah.
Said they were miserable.
Mm. It's really sad.
20%.
It's very, very sad.
That's terrible. And I know, because I wouldn't have a sense of it except I was miserable.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And I also know now that it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
And
And
the
we all go
fear,
through it.
you have to overcome the fear
Yeah.
to make the change.
Yeah.
But you do it, it's you're going toward something. You're not going away from something. You're
Yeah.
going toward a better version of yourself
Yeah.
in a different situation.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely a goal that works for almost any kind of coaching.
Mhm. Mhm. And see, that's why, Tom, I said you and I, we definitely have to work with each other at some way or another, because it's the same freaking damn language, just
That is.
relationship work. And the other thing that I really want to be able to highlight is I want to be able to use this platform to highlight all of the amazing stuff that you have going on. Like, do you have any, because we're drawing close to the hours, do
Oh
you
yeah.
have any, we're having
Wow.
so
Where
much
did
fun.
that time go? Okay.
And you're doing amazing for a guy who's been on his very first podcast. You're a natural at this stuff.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
you're welcome. I want to be able to highlight any programs that you got going on, any evergreen type things that you may be like
Sure.
having that people can actually learn more about. Please do share.
Sure. I've got when I start working with somebody, if they get interested in what I'm doing, one of the first steps is what I call a job satisfaction breakdown session,
Mhm.
which, there's a lot of reasons why you might be unhappy at your job, or might be happy at your job, right? So we talked about being, a new supervisor that's not you're not meshing with that supervisor. That's 1 out of 10
Mhm.
types of things that I've sort of identified that you need to be thinking about. And
Mhm.
so if you're unhappy, like I was, you
Mhm.
might not know why you're unhappy.
Mhm.
I've got to, so what I will do is sit down with somebody and we'll go over and say, like, okay, tell me what's going on.
Mhm.
We will help them identify, I will help them identify where they are,
Mhm.
what's going on in their current situation, because this is a very important piece of the puzzle, right? We say, coaching is getting from A to B.
Mhm.
A is where you are, B is where you want to be,
Mhm.
and getting there is how you get there. It's your strategy.
Yeah.
It's that simple, but it's super complicated too, because most people don't know where they are. They don't understand their current situation. They don't understand their their environment. right? It's like a fish in water. Fish is like, what's water? I don't know what, it's they don't know. And
Right.
so you really do need to do some work trying to figure out. It's not long work. These sessions take about half an hour, and I
Mhm.
can and we can really pin down a couple of really big nuggets usually within that half an hour.
Mhm.
Say, okay, so here are some of the issues that you've got, and here's some things you can do about them.
Mhm.
This session is normally it's $147 for 30 minutes on my website, but for any of your listeners, I would like to offer it for free because
Yes.
of my first podcast. I'm very excited about my first podcast.
Yeah.
And I'd like to offer, if somebody wants to go to my website, sign up for that, I give it to you for free. Just mention
Re
Ree's name and I've forgotten already. Nothing less than extraordinary podcast. Yes, there we go. Um,
exactly.
but that's one of the things I'd like to offer your listeners.
Mhm.
There's other things on my website. There's a resource on my website that you can do that kind of thing on your own. It's
Mhm.
it's called a Circle of Satisfaction. It's a little tool I have. It's a 2-pager. It's a PDF. You print it out. You do the exercises, and it really gives you a pretty good sense pretty quickly, probably 10 minutes
Mhm.
of where you are.
Yeah.
And I actually encourage everybody to do that even before I sit down with them,
Mhm. Mhm.
because then they've gotten started. They've started thinking a little bit ahead of time. Um, because you might be miserable because your supervisor, but you might be miserable because of the level of stress at your job.
Yeah.
The level of stress might not be the issue, but you might think it's the issue.
Mhm.
But it might be the level of stress because your sense of mission or sense of purpose
Mhm.
doesn't align with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if your sense of mission or purpose aligned with what you were doing, you could have the same level of activity
Mhm.
with a lower level of stress.
Mhm.
And so all of these things relate to each other, and it's really, really helpful and really quick to
Mhm.
sort of sit down and think, okay, this is what's going on. This is almost a literal picture of where I am right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've had so many people go, "Oh my God, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that was what was bothering me." And one of the key pieces is that level of learning and development.
Yeah.
You have it's important. It's not equally important to everybody, but it's important at some level to everybody.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you're just doing the same job over and over that you've always been doing, that you don't have to learn new skills, that you don't have to learn new anything new, you're just doing it over and over again. Every day is the same as the next day. I don't know anybody that would enjoy that.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's
Because
that level
there's
of
different
learning.
levels of challenge
Yes,
for different people, right? So, but everybody needs things slightly spicing up in
right,
their own little flavor that they
right.
like, they
You know,
enjoy.
maybe it's your colleagues, maybe the people you work
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
are are not fun to be around.
Mhm.
I mean, there's 10 of those categories that I've
Mhm.
identified that are helpful to sort of think about. Um, which, by the way, are also reasons that you might like your job.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, you might have a terrible job, but a really great supervisor.
Mhm.
And that's cool. And you're not miserable because your supervisor's so good,
Yeah.
but you still might not be super happy. You still might not be uh, uh, as happy as you could be.
Yeah.
And and unless you won the lottery,
Mhm.
either literally or because of how you were born, what family you were born into, you're going to have to work
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
either your own business, 9 to 5, you're going to have to do something. And if you're happy now, more power to you.
Mhm.
Things change,
Yeah.
right? And so I I think coaching is good for everybody, but it's really, really helpful if you are really hurting and
Mm.
you're really scared, because it is a scary place to be miserable in a job, especially if you're somebody. I'll use my age, somebody like my age, maybe a little bit younger, who has a mortgage, a family, schools, college savings to work on, all of these things. You often, even the thought of losing your job or changing jobs or not knowing what to do, what the first step to take is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying, which is why a lot of people just stay in that same job being a little bit miserable every day. And that's no good either.
Yeah, until they can't stand it anymore, until you
Right.
really just go off the rails.
Right, because it's going to happen eventually, or you're just going to live life miserable for several thousand hours a year, which is no fun either.
No, that's it. I mean, I think the more like people really, as they start to figure out and doing these assessment, it is so insightful. Like I do my assessment always with my client ahead of time because I always cherish their time, and time is so precious. I mean, we all have the same amount of time, but we can't buy back time. We can't, you
Yeah.
know. And so I always make sure that I do the assessment with my clients so that we can really dive into the source of the real problem, and we're cutting all of the fluff and all of the blah blah so that I can get to it, because they don't know, as you see, like as if you mentioned, like there are fish in the water, but what's water? Like they don't know, certain thing, they have insights and stuff, but it's nice to have somebody with an objective eye who's gone through it, who's done it, who's seen and worked with so many clients that they're like, oh, I picked up on that one, so I know what they're going through and what they're struggling with. And it's nice to have somebody to just reflect that back to you, because you kind of know. That's why sometimes I always talk out loud, because then I need to hear myself reflected back to me and go, oh, that's what I'm
Yes, absolutely. We are called verbal processors.
Exactly. Thom, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. Like I said, honestly, I really
Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you so much. I highly encourage people to reach out to Thom just to get a discovery call and really connect. And you definitely want to write in and do the assessment and really get to know, because there's nothing worse than being at a place at a job that you despise and you're dying with time. It's just a matter of time. I actually had a psychologist when I was, this is slightly different, but as I was going through my divorce, I was so desperately hoping that I can save my marriage. And I asked him the question, do you think like when two people are constantly fighting all the time, and they seem to fight over the same issue over and over again, is it savable? And here I'm looking at him like, please tell me I can save my marriage.
Right.
Was during the time when I wasn't even getting a separation, anything. I pretend to be divorced because I wanted to know what the impact on children were from divorce and whether I was making the right decision. And you know what? This man really helped me big time, even though it took me 2 or 3 years before I actually decided to move into action. But he told me, and he looked me in the eye and said, it is just like a band-aid that you're putting on top. You're afraid to rip it off, but one day or another, you're going to have to rip it off. And so this marriage, you can't save it. And it's not because he wasn't for saving marriage. Yes, he was. But if you're constantly going over the same issue, reliving this thing, and then every day you're feeling, I was feeling like I didn't recognize who I am anymore. I was feeling I was being somebody else to please my husband. I wasn't aligned to who I was. And I was completely.
And that's not sustainable, is it?
No, it is not, because after a while, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, you're just going to completely crash and burn, and you're going to resent the people around you. And that's the worst part. I don't ever want that for anybody who is going through either in relationship or in the workplace. That's why both Thom and I are super passionate about what we do, because we want to see you thrive. We want you to have a different option than the one that you're currently going through or living, because you do have options and you can make that choice.
And you don't, and people don't, people just don't believe they do. That's what I've found to be the biggest, one of the biggest hurdles is, you can make a change if you believe you can make a change. And that's, but that is such a hard belief to accept sometimes. And it's a hard belief to accept that you have to make a change. Right. If you're miserable at work, maybe you need a new job. Maybe you don't. Maybe you need a new way of looking at your current job. Maybe you are not showing up authentically. What happens if you did? What would that look like? You know, there's things you can do. You don't necessarily, they don't always wind up necessarily leaving,
Yeah.
but you've got to make a change.
Yeah.
You've got to affect the things that you can affect,
Yeah.
because that's the only thing you can do, frankly.
Yeah. I
You
can
sit
tell
around.
you that, yeah, I can tell you from being in a job that I was in, feeling fulfilled and also having that same mentality, like I should be grateful for this job. Oh my God, people
Yeah,
would kill to be in this type of job. What's
yeah.
wrong with me? Only to find myself on a burnout. And there's so much shame that goes and is connected to that too.
Mhm.
But the moment I started focusing on me and taking charge back, and I was terrified like anybody, but just
Yeah,
doing little baby step at a time, because I realized I can't keep doing this.
yeah.
It's
Well, and
I
that's the key. That's the thing about, that is a big difference between your coaching and my coaching,
yeah.
because I will work, if I work with somebody long enough, my approach is to say, okay, look, once you get a job,
Mhm.
it's not too early to start thinking about, you know, maybe how can I make this job better?
Yeah.
What else could I do in this job that would make it better? Where else would I like to go building off of this job in a
Yeah.
couple of years, in a few
Yeah.
years? Because that's the nature of work these days.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that for relationships, though.
No. No, we were asking, trying to find you a
Right? See,
long-lasting relationship. That is the huge big
that's a
difference.
big
Big
difference. That's a big difference. Yeah.
difference. Tom, on that note, I want to leave you with the last word, a quote that you have that has served you well in your lifetime that you can maybe share with the public that can help inspire them. What is that one quote for you?
This is a quote. When you asked me that, it's the quote's on my website. And I love, I love modern music and listening to lyrics and music, because the artists are so
Mm,
incredibly passionate and deep about what they sing about and what they write. Um, there's a song by Seal called
mm.
"Crazy" that says, "In a world full of people, only some want to fly. Isn't that crazy?"
Oh,
And that just encapsulates for me coaching, right?
yeah.
You can fly.
Yeah.
You don't even know that you can fly, but you can fly.
Yes. Oh, I love that quote. I never heard of that one, but I love Seal. But that's a good one. That's like something that I heard recently about, I don't know if it's an eagle. It's been raised with regular birds or chicken or something, but he
Mm,
doesn't know that he can fly. So he
yeah,
walks around like every chicken because he thinks he's a chicken when he's
right.
actually an eagle. So
Yeah.
be the
And
damn eagle.
that's right. We're all eagles. We're all eagles. We can be amazing. And that's the thing. You know, we all are capable of so much more.
Yes.
Everybody is capable of so much more than they think they are.
Yeah.
And we are so much more than we think we are. We're capable of so much more. Who we are is way more valuable than any of us give ourselves credit for.
Hmm.
And the more you can sort of internalize that and understand that, the
Hmm.
more powerful you are.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, and you're way more powerful than you think you
Absolutely. You have more strength than you think. I mean, I didn't know
are.
I would have the
Absolutely.
strength that I have going through what I've gone through. Only when I'm truly tested, that's when my true color comes. So you're made much stronger than you think. And the other thing that I would leave with is this, is when I was actually a kid, I actually got people always telling me, Ree, you're so special. Ree, you're going to mount up to be like this amazing person. Ree, you're going to make such a huge difference in the world. And I don't know why they say these things to me, but they always said it. Because why? Okay, because I had these two dimples. Okay, so in my culture, so in my culture, anybody has dimple, and mine is so deep, they're like, you're gonna be making so much money and you're gonna be doing a whole bunch. And so I was bombarded by these noise, and I took on the pressure, like, oh my God, I'm in my
Yeah.
20s. I haven't even lived to do anything. Look at me, I got nothing. And then in my 30s, oh my God, in my career, I haven't mounted out to anything at all, nothing to show or to prove for.
Yeah.
And then I realized that is so not healthy. And the
Yeah.
moment I decided that, you know what? Yes, I can be all of those things that those people said to me when I was actually a little kid, but at the same time, I can be the amazing person to who I am for me, not because I need to be some kind of a like a president or some kind of
Mhm.
celebrity or changing the world. As long as I show up being the best version of who I am, whether I'm a cleaning
Exactly.
lady, whether I am a nurse, whether I am a teacher, whether I am a friend or a family, if I just show up and the moment that I put that into perspective and realize I don't have to be all of that to prove
No,
my
you
worth.
don't.
I can just be the best version of Ree, and whatever the universe had planned for me is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to enjoy every damn moment of it.
Mhm.
Pressure all just leave and look at me. I'm doing a
Yeah.
damn podcast and
You
writing
got a
all this
podcast.
stuff.
That's awesome.
Come on. So all I'm saying is don't put all of that pressure on
No.
yourself. Just enjoy the process and show up as you are. Whatever
Yeah.
that version you were meant to be in this world, this earth, if you just be curious and just really have fun with it,
It
you
is,
figure
it
out you're
is,
going to be quite amazing.
it is the magic sauce.
It really is.
It really is the magic sauce. And it's just heartbreaking to me how many people don't see that and how many people don't know that. And I think majority of people don't see that. We hear this stupid, this phrase that I've heard 1,000 times. They call it work for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's so old school,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that is so old school. We have choices.
Yeah.
Even if getting a new job is not a choice that you feel like you have because of family obligations or whatever, you've got a choice about how you look at that job.
Yeah.
You've got a choice about how you approach that job, how you show up in that job. That can make the world of difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, Thom, love this interview. I am so, so happy that I get to showcase you and put you
I'm
in
very
this world.
excited. I'm very excited you asked me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thom. On that note, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Till next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.